Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today is the fourth episode of the Rings of Power review. And this episode, of course, is Make Numenor Great Again because it fits so well with the whole I guess gist of this episode. All the dumb remarks towards politics these days. It takes you out of the episode. And today, to join me talking about it is Jason from the Tradman podcast. How you doing, Jason?
Oh, pretty good, Connor. Thanks for having me back on Plotlines. I've seen some of your previous episodes on this, and just as a full disclosure, I feel a little bit adequate on this subject compared to your past guests. So,
Don't worry, I will educate you. People will find enjoyment in that.
there you go.
But yeah, Mac is in the chat. Mac the Knight. How's it going, Mac? Good to have you here. And then Anthony is supposed to be here, but he has ditched us apparently. But we'll see if he shows up. No one tell him we're live if he shows up. Uh, you know, give
That
him
might be dangerous.
well, he doesn't tell his guests he's live, and if he comes late to this, it's payback. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, Keeper of the Domus says that the best part of this episode is not having the pretend hobbits. I agree. Really, the Harfoots are one of the silliest things in the show. It's just very out of place. Jason, you haven't read the Silmarillion, right?
No, I haven't. I've just read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and to be honest, I've really only gotten into these things like fantasy in general the past several years, and finally got around to The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings past couple of years. So
Yeah, I mean that's okay. I haven't been a lifelong fan of fantasy either, so it's not really that I don't think that sends you out of the group, out of the club, just because you have a long history of liking it or something. I don't think that actually gives you a huge boost, I guess.
right.
But so the episode, do you think it's actually well? Do you think first is it a problem when you want the main characters, like when the audience wants the main characters to fail? Like, do you think that's a problem in a TV show?
Well, I would say yes. It's particularly, of course, what is the general direction and plot. But yeah, I mean, in general, yeah, you don't want the main characters to fail. Um, is that the sense you're getting from it
Well,
yourself?
when I watch Galadriel, when she got imprisoned during this episode, I was I was very happy she got imprisoned. Like both, like all the protagonists are so annoying, and you almost just want them to be taken out. Oh yeah, Hope Anthony never responded, so we'll see if he Hope's in the chat. But yeah,
Oh, I
uh,
can't I can't see the chat here.
just I mean, if you go to the link for the episode, you'll be able to.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll see. Again, we'll see if Anthony shows up. But we got Jason, and that's more important.
Yeah, I maybe people's frustration with some of the main characters on here is from a more thorough knowledge than what I have on the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all that type stuff. I mean, they're not my favorite main characters, but I don't think that I was necessarily annoyed when she was in jail or imprisoned. The only thing that really annoyed me about uh how do you pronounce her name correctly?
Galadriel.
Galadriel is somebody said like after the first or second episode that she annoys him because she doesn't move her mouth when she talks. And now that's what I focus on a lot of times is she moving her mouth. But
Yeah.
but all joking aside, no, I mean, she's not a great protagonist by any means, but no, I haven't found myself rooting against her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, well, the reason I'm rooting against her is just because she is just like unable to not unable to keep herself from putting her foot in her mouth, unwilling to just, she has no filter. She has no ability to think and say, and actually Halbrand's point was that she doesn't think, which is so like, if this is usually like these feminist shows, usually their goal is to have women that are powerful, that that girls can look up to. But I mean, Halbrand literally does explain to her how terrible she is at negotiating with the queen. And the queen also, like, everyone's bipolar in the show. The queen likes elves, hates elves, likes elves, hates elves. And then all the people who suddenly are afraid of one elf, which the whole MAGA moment where everyone suddenly the whole like Numenorian people are worried about their job, losing their jobs because one elf shows up. One elf shows up.
Yeah, I didn't understand the whole point of that. And on top of it, she wasn't even the one that beat that guy up. He was beat up by the gentleman that's supposed to be, I guess, the lost heir to the Southlands. And it was, and I remember, I'm real bad with the names on this show still.
Halbrand. It's Halbrand.
Halbrand. Yeah. So I was kind of trying to figure out, where did the hatred from the elf come from when Galadriel wasn't even involved in his beating?
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing, is this show expects you to already know the lore or something to do with the lore, because I mean, okay, let's just talk about why the men of Numenor don't like elves at this point. It's supposed to be because they want immortality, and elves have immortality. So men become jealous, and they don't understand why they can't go and live in Valinor, where all who live there are deathless. There's a great line from the Silmarillion that basically explains it's not that the land makes them deathless, it's that the deathless live there. So Valinor is not a place where you gain immortality. It is just happens to be the place where the immortals live. This is Jason. Does that make sense?
Yes, can I could hear you, but the internet was breaking up. So
Oh,
are we good right now?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and you know, I know one of your past guests, our friend Hope, had also mentioned before that, you know, they're expecting people to already have this knowledge. So when somebody like me coming in that doesn't necessarily know the folklore, you know, I'm watching it and I'm like, what's the deal with this one elf? Like he, you know, like I mentioned earlier, he wasn't even involved with this, or she wasn't involved with this situation. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's assumptions made that you would think in situations like that they would want to at least cover in a quick snippet or something, because again, somebody like me watching it, it didn't make sense.
yeah. Well, that's because they don't know how to show something. They don't know how to like set things up very well. They wanted to focus so much on Galadriel in the first couple episodes, even though she's really not the protagonist of any of these stories in the books or in any of the source material. She's at least, she's at most, just one of the ring bearers eventually. She will bear one of the rings, and she knows Celebrimbor, and Celebrimbor sort of likes her at one point. But the thing is, she's not in that part of the story. They've moved her towards Numenor, which she never, in the source material interacts with. And this whole Southland thing is completely made up insofar as, anything we know about them. I mean, there were people that lived in Mordor before it became Mordor, but that's as far as we know. It's never been a focal point of anything insofar as, I mean, the best way you could do this is just have them as, I guess. So if you think about in the Lord of the Rings movies, and in the books, where sort of you hear murmurs of the southern people and the what is it, Haladrim, yeah, basically the minions of Sauron in the War of the Ring. You just hear about them, you encounter them a little bit, and then they're the armies that fight against the protagonist, basically.
Yeah.
Well, you could have done that in a similar way if you just kept the perspective mainly on the Numenorians and their inner problems. And the inner problems, all they have to do, okay, first of all, you're in you're in a country, you're in a court, a king's court or a queen's court. I don't know anything about these characters enough to know what place they are in said court. Okay, Elendil is supposed to be the lord, a powerful lord, but he's not really treated like one. He's treated like dirt. And if he was being treated like dirt because he was against the sort of the leadership at the time, I would understand that. But they haven't really shown that fully, at least. And then Ar-Pharazôn is sort of the leader of the opposite group, but he hasn't done anything truly to really show his colors. And Muriel just seems like she doesn't know what she's doing. It's just a lot of incompetence.
Well, and what was the queen's name there again? You just said
Muriel.
it. Ariel.
Muriel.
Oh, Muriel. Yeah. See, I was watching last night, and I'm bad with names in real life. Like, I'll probably forget people's names all the time, and then I'll get in situations where I've been talking to this guy for like 6 months, but I'm too deep in the game to ever ask him his name, right? So I kind of do the same things with my with shows as well. But no, yeah, I mean, her whole persona seems like when she's ruling, yeah, she's not very effective in her ruling. She's very confusing and doesn't seem to have a whole lot of reasoning in her decisions. Now, I know last night they kind of got into it, I guess, a little bit about why she was doing what she was doing, but I don't think there was a need to drag it out the way they did in her to make, because it made her seem incompetent. When once you got to the reasons, it made some sense, I guess. But yeah, I'm not a fan of her as a queen, because it almost makes you, at least with me, it made me not like her for at least an episode or two, for really no reason.
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, one of the things that I kind of got annoyed with, just this is a lore thing, is that when it comes to the good Numenorians at this time, they still they allow themselves to die when they get older, and they don't lengthen their life out so that to the point where they're basically old and crippled, basically. And and her dad is basically at that point where he's basically just living to live. And so one of the things is that the Numenorians used to just be able to lay down and not get back up again, kind of how Our Lady just kind of fell asleep and and died and was assumed. That happens with Aragorn at the end of his reign. So it's really strange to me that Tar Palantir, who is the king, he's the king alive, but he's kind of just a mess at this point. But the thing is, even with so guys, the prophecy. So it's a prophecy that she's seen in the Palantir, which the Palantir should be Elendil should have the Palantir, and they're not lost. We know exactly where they are at this time. So that was just a bunch of made up stuff, but that's what they're doing. They're just making things up. The Palantir were gifted from the elves to the lords of the Idune, who is Elendil is the lord of that. So basically, he should have them all, and they shouldn't be lost in any capacity. There's one in Tall Eressëa, which is off the coast of Valinor. So basically, Muriel should only be communicating with the elves from said place, because Palantir is basically TV, and that's literally what it is. It's TV that you can communicate through. So it's kind of what we're doing right now, Jason.
Yeah.
So like that's what its purpose is. I don't think its purpose is to show like is to show this like prophecies kind of thing, because that's what the Mirror of Galadriel is for in the Lord of the Rings. Frodo looks into it and sees visions of the future that may come to pass but may not, and Galadriel even says something similar, but she's talking about the wrong thing. And the Palantir, I mean, if that's what she's seeing, then my only conclusion would be that the elves are trying to warn them, which could make sense if they went that way, but I don't know if they're going with that. Everyone's arguing about planets in the chat, which I don't understand, but that's fine. But anyway, so the Palantir scares Muriel and Palantir, which I think is funny. His name's Palantir and he has a Palantir. But they're scared of the vision that basically Numenor is going to get destroyed. And they don't do, so they know there's a problem. Now Galadriel knows there's a problem, but none of them are doing anything to stop said problem, because it seems that they would understand that they were at the Valar are angry with them. That's what the tree is saying. That's why the tree's losing its
she said it was crying.
Power. Yeah, the Valar are crying, which is basically like saying the angels are crying and God is angry with you. And basically they're not doing anything to undo that. And then when they sort of do, everyone suddenly is now supportive of Muriel, like at the end of the episode. So in the beginning of the episode, Pharazôn gives a whole speech about basically make Numenor great again. And then by the end, basically Elendil is asking everyone to fight with Galadriel, even though they just wanted to, get rid of her and never talk to the elves ever again. It's suddenly the people that had no didn't interact with any of the main characters in any capacity throughout the whole episode suddenly have changed their mind completely overnight. And then what's the point of this thing? If basically all the Numenorians suddenly are now pro elf, then the prophecy's already been avoided. And what are we even doing here?
Well, you bring up an interesting point as well about the people in general, because you get the feeling that the people are like super fickle. Because we were talking about earlier that what was it, Halbrand? Yeah, Halbrand that got in the tussle with that one guy, and he had swayed the whole crowd right there to be against the elves and were ready to riot and do all this kind of stuff. The other guy, what was his name? The queen. Pharazôn, I guess. Yeah, Pharazôn. He comes down, gives not that great of a speech to begin with.
No, Elendil. You're thinking of Elendil.
Is it Elendil?
Elendil. Pharazôn's the old chancellor guy.
Yeah. Well, he was the one isn't he the one that came and gave the speech to the crowd right there after in the beginning of the show, because they were ready to write. Yeah. So he comes out, he gives the chancellor, I guess, like you said, he gives the speech, not a great speech to begin with. Now everybody's all of a sudden turned against him, and now they're not ready to riot. And then like you said, fast forward to what you were talking about, everybody's scared of the elves, wants to get rid of them. Next thing you know, everybody's on board. And it just seems like everybody was super fickle in that town.
Yeah. Hey, just a quick second. Please, everyone, like, share, and subscribe if you like what we're doing at Plotlines. And if you want to support the channel, please go to Bishop Sheen Rosaries, link in the description. Use the use Plotlines 10 to get 10% off of all your purchases on rosaries. So check that out. But back to the episode. So basically, just my point is everyone's bipolar. That seems to me is the queen's bipolar. Galadriel is the only one that kind of isn't bipolar, but she's stupid. Just thinking back to the last episode, she couldn't figure out that the symbol that Sauron was using was the mountains of Mordor, when literally everyone watching the show could tell that it was that was literally the theory online. Everyone believed that, but after thousands of years, they couldn't figure that out in the show. And it just doesn't make any sense. The whole thing is just poorly crafted, and I'm not really sure what anybody's goals are, especially Queen Muriel. I other than like preventing destruction and keeping her own power, I'm not sure what she's going for. And I'm not even sure why they should care except for like I guess like I just don't understand why they should care about the southern or the sort of the Southlands people, insofar as nobody's made an argument for why they should be like saved or anything.
Let me ask you just kind of a geographic question, historical question on this. Fast forward to The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings and stuff. The Southlands, is that where Mordor ends up being, in that area?
Mordor is where the Southlands. That's exactly the location. Like Mordor will be, or that will become Mordor.
Okay, because that's, I guess that's obvious to most people, and I was picking up on that from the show when they showed the Southlands, and then they showed all the orcs digging and tearing down stuff, and I told my wife, I said, I think that's where Mordor ends up being later.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where Mordor is.
Okay,
but let's get to the storyline going in there. Arondir is captured, meets what is it? The father guy. Adar,
yeah.
Which literally means father. He seems to be a dark elf. Which isn't really, we don't learn anything about him, so it's not very interesting. Also, he really looks like Jeff Bezos if he had hair.
Is he in any of the folklore that Tolkien wrote, or he's just made up character? Because I went online last night about it, because I was thinking about your show today, and I was like, he might be an important character to have an idea of who he is. And yeah, one thing that I just read was like he was like an elf that I guess Sauron or whoever ended up making him the first orc. But I didn't read beyond that because I don't know the relationship. But that's just what I read about him.
Orcs were made by Morgoth, so
yeah,
he wouldn't. This is like, the orcs have been around for like thousands of years. So
I'll see if I can find what I did. But yeah, that's basically what it was. I'd have to look up.
But he seems like he's a dark elf, but we've never really seen dark elves fight for Mordor, but that doesn't mean they didn't. They're sort of they're basing him off of this character named Eorl. So this dark elf that basically was an enemy. What he did was he kidnapped a elf princess and forced her to marriage, had a kid with her, and then Hope says Anthony can't get on. I hope, I don't know why that would be. It's not like you don't have to put in a password. Even Jason was able to get on.
If I can do it, anyone.
Hope, can you try and help him? Or Rob, if Rob's around. But yeah, hold on.
I'm trying to find that where I saw that last night, because his
never mind. No, it's Anthony's service is bad. That's why. Okay. Well, if he comes on, he comes on. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But that anyway, so but what was your thought of just the character in general?
Well, they didn't give me much to even really think about him up to that point, because like I said, what I just mentioned to you about him was what I read about him, because so I mean, I really don't have a lot to think about him. I do know he seemed very. I guess something I kind of had in my head is why was he so emotional, like when the orcs died, you know?
Yeah, that was creepy. Didn't wait.
Um,
Am I wrong? Did he kill him though? Didn't he?
well, he ended up killing that one orc,
Yeah.
but his whole disposition to me kind of seemed like he was sad at the death of
Yeah,
the
it's
orcs and stuff
creepy.
like that. Yeah, because from the feeling that I've always got from the orcs is they really don't have feelings.
Well, I mean, this is a dark elf. This guy isn't an orc.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
But
that's
no,
true.
it doesn't make any sense. Even so if do you remember Gothmog, the leader of the orcs in the Return of the King? He loves killing other orcs occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually Gothmog isn't necessarily an orc anyways. He could have just been a man of some sort, or so this is kind of the character that I would have imagined. So he's similar to this Adar character, but this Adar character, this Adar character, it wouldn't really have much feelings for these orcs because these orcs are just kind of worthless. I mean, they're minions. They're expendable. That's their point. That's the point of their character. That is their characterization. Though it's funny. Did you ever notice that all the orcs are oddly like they're all pale orcs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most orcs aren't pale, so it's very interesting that they're going. That it seems like they're trying to tell us something.
I hadn't even picked up on that.
Well, because most orcs are just are like they live in the dark, so they don't have their skin isn't light.
Right.
And Tolkien even just points out when there's a pale orc, and it's a rarity. Like there's like one or two pale orcs in all of his story time or story in his lore, because basically that, and most of the time you point stuff out like that when it's an oddity, when it's not normal. So a pale orc is not normal, but suspiciously all of the orcs in this show are pale. And it just so happens that they had enslaved, this the first black elf.
Okay. That's getting deep on here.
You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
just saying they have Ar-Pharazôn is MAGA, is make Numenor great again. The orcs are all pale and trying to capture all these diverse people because everyone's diverse in this.
Hey, Connor, we might be doing the wrong show here. This may be the conspiracy show.
This isn't a good This is just
no, it's that I would have never have thought about that, but I'm definitely going to be paying closer attention to those type of details.
well,
Yeah.
they're all, I mean, the whole advertising for the show was basically like, we're making Tolkien for the new generation, for the current day, making it like the real world. Like that's their whole mentality. So of course it's going to come out like that. If they, Peter Jackson's whole mentality was we're putting Tolkien's work, we're bringing it to life as he would have wanted or as he made it, not with our own opinions, but with his opinions and with his themes and views and stuff like that. And these people are just like, we're doing whatever we want. We don't really care what he thought. So that's it. And
well, yeah, and yeah, I mean, I guess they're in some ways they're using the characters Tolkien created, but not the storyline that he came up with.
Yeah, I mean, the Numenor story is so interesting because it's a concept of rebellion against God. That is literally what Numenor is about. And it is a rebellion against the dictates of the natural law. men must die. Okay, men don't like the fact that men must die. Okay, so they're going to try and fight that. That's the whole premise of the Numenor story. Have you gotten any of that? Have you seen any of that in this in the TV show?
No, no, and maybe it's better I didn't read all this before the show. But I going back to Adar. Okay, so it was on. I found the website that I read it on. It was called, the website's thenerdist.com, and it just says here in the first sentence, Adar is the first orc Morgoth made from a kidnapped elf.
Oh,
that's why, unlike all other orcs who live shorter lives, he's still around thousands of years, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what they said. Now I don't know.
He doesn't look like an orc, and the only reason why Adar is the name of the orc, of the first orc, is just because Adar means father. Yeah. So that's probably true insofar as the name of the first orc is Adar, because he's the father of all orcs. But this guy is certainly not a orc. He looks like he would be a dark elf if I had imagined what a dark elf would look like.
Sorry. Go ahead.
He's very, he's very pale. He avoids all the sunlight and stuff like that. And then yeah. So if they're making him a dark elf, it's actually the first time they've made someone look like they would if they didn't have sunlight. Just imagine, just think about the dwarves. Dwarves don't get sunlight.
We're gonna get into this whole translucent thing, aren't we?
No, it's just it's just like they pick and choose when they want diversity, and then even when it doesn't make sense. I mean, people would look the same anyways. Like just generally, Numenor, everyone would look similar insofar as skin color, because they all they interbred. They all they got, there wasn't that many people there to begin with, so they intermarried and they had kids, and by this generation, they would have most likely all be related in some capacity. So then they all would have looked somewhat similar. I mean, it's fine to have different characteristics insofar as, hair and eyes and stuff like that, but generally skin color would be about the same. That would be the same way with the elves. That would be the same way with the Southland people. That would be the same with every people in this time, because they're not flying. They're not like migrating for the most part. I mean, the hobbits are kind of the only people that do that, but even they don't, what's the word? They don't talk to anybody but themselves. So it wouldn't make sense in that capacity. They would all intermarry too, because they are avoiding all the big people. So again, it's just they're doing things because they want to do it. That's really it. But anyway, so Adar basically sends Arondir back with a message of, basically he wants them to surrender and swear fealty to them. Or
surrender or die.
I don't know why he just didn't kill him. I don't see literally the only reason why they didn't kill him was because they need him to stay alive for the story.
Yeah, well, that and that's what I was going to bring up here a minute ago as we got into this. They let him go. Adar let him go in order to deliver a message, and then he still almost dies when he has like 100 orcs chasing him when he saves Theo and his mother, as they're going back to the town or to the
somewhere
fortress wherever they're at that point.
But fortress, I really got Helm's Deep vibes from it. It just seems like they remade Helm's Deep really small Helm's Deep. But continue what you were saying.
No, I was just saying that so he almost dies up to that point, which then again I made the comment to my wife. I said, well, if he dies, how is he going to deliver this message? But is it okay if I move on to Theo, to that board, or did you want, or did you have more on that section?
Well, just hold on a second.
Oh,
The stream is having an issue. Hopefully. Can everybody hear us still, or is it not working?
I can hear you fine on this end, if that makes any difference.
I mean, I'm thinking more of the stream people. Let me check. No, it seems to be fine. I don't know what's going on. Why it says, oh, okay, we're back to being good. So we're it doesn't make sense to me that what was the purpose of sending Arondir back? I still don't really get what the purpose was, because all the orcs are still trying to kill them all.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, is not only did he die almost delivering that message, but apparently they didn't get that message because they're trying to kill him. And like you said, they're still interested in killing the people in this town, fortress, whatever the case may be. So there is some contradictory type information going on right there, though I guess that's not outside the norm, right? Especially if you go back in time, because messages from the back didn't always make it to the front in a timely manner,
Yeah, but everyone teleports in this show, so it shouldn't matter. Well, how was Arondir there? How did he get there in time? Like, if he could have gotten there in time, then the message could have gotten to the orcs in time.
But yeah,
that wouldn't make much sense. I just think if he's just toying with him, I don't get why he didn't just kill him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's really trying to get a message to these people at all. If he wanted to do that, he would have just gone out there and, I don't know, yelled at them, like, brought an army of orcs and, yelled at them and said, surrender or we'll kill you all. That's very standard. That's very standard movie or TV show situations.
Well, Adar, sorry to back up here, because I just thought of something I was going to ask you. Adar's conversation with him before he released him, did you sense any deeper meaning to that conversation, or was it just what it was? Because he talks about he remembers walking on the banks of that river, I guess where the elves live and stuff like that. The only thing I really got out of that is that he's just making the point that he used to be an elf.
Well, he is an elf. He's not he's still an elf. Like,
dark elf.
He doesn't look like does he look like a orc to you? Like, I don't see
No,
it.
I guess I'm just
he's still he's just a elf that is evil. That's basically it.
I guess he comes across as either a hybrid elf or an elf with a really bad burn on his face.
Well, okay. Elves or orcs are just elves that were turned, or were orcs are just elves that were basically what's the word? Mutilated.
Okay.
They were basically tortured into insanity. And then they bred, and then and then their descendants were orcs. You're thinking Uruk-hai are the ones that are bred like between like orcs and men, which is creepy. But he's not looking like an orc. He's not Uruk-hai either. So he is just a dark elf who is obviously a servant of Sauron. And he's not interesting enough. And no, I really don't think he was telling us any, big information. It doesn't seem like anybody in their dialogue was giving us that much information. Now, basically it's so at the end, Arondir saves Theo after he stupidly goes out and tries to find food, which the fact that nobody has food is utterly ridiculous. Everyone brings supplies. Like we saw them decide to go to the Elven tower, and they had like bags and stuff, but no one brought food for some reason. There are orcs around, but nobody brings food.
Well, they probably thought there was a grocery store in town.
Mac asked if we're talking about Fauci. Because Anthony, they were talking about Anthony. Wait, isn't Fauci's first name Anthony?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Anthony Fauci.
Yeah, Anthony Fauci.
So, did you ever see? Sorry, did you ever see the? I think I sent a picture to the group text that we're involved in about a guy at the airport that was wearing Fauci socks.
No.
Yeah, there was a guy in the airport and he was sitting next to me at one of the restaurants or whatever, and he was some type of doctor, but yeah, he had Fauci socks on.
That's funny. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with your text messages.
I can't keep up with it either, to be honest.
You can't keep up with your own text messages?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. It's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah. But so Arondir's story is just kind of boring. Do you think that like Theo and his mother are like seem like genuinely mother and son kind of thing? They just don't, like, their relationship seems really, I don't know, like really forced, really it doesn't really come across like mother and son.
No, I mean to me it does, because it seems like that's how mother and sons are a lot of times portrayed, like that in Hollywood anyway, right? You've got a teenage son who rebels against the mother, and I'm assuming she's a single mother.
Yeah, they've gone into how he doesn't know where his father
that's right, they have
is, or whatever.
But I mean, yeah, so I mean, you instantly knew when she said he couldn't go into town to get the food that he was definitely doing it. Because again, it always seems that's the way those relationships are portrayed in the movies and TV shows. But yeah, I mean, he went in there and I'm like, okay, good deal. You were brave. You went and did, trying to help people understand. But then he just got greedy there at one point. I mean, you have a wheelbarrow full of supplies that will help you, at least for the, foreseeable future, or whatnot. If you need more supplies, you can always make plans later. But every time it's like that in every single movie, every single show, somebody is just a little bit too greedy. It ends up backfiring on them.
Yeah, no, he's definitely greedy. I mean, he has the sword too, so he's already there. There was that weird part where that old man was talking to him about Sauron coming back and being prepared for that. And I'm confused, because is the guy evil too? Should we even be caring about these people? It seems like half of them are like want Sauron to come back.
Yeah, but did Theo even know that he had that sword, or what it was from Morgoth? Did he even, or was it just because I got the impression he just saw it and got it, but he didn't really know what it was.
Well, the other friend, remember, like his friend who's also a jerk, and just a petulant child and really annoying. He was talking about the return of the king, and I always thought that was referring to Sauron more than, I think that's, I mean, first of all, Halbrand might be Sauron anyways. So the whole Halbrand is the king of the Southlands being Sauron makes total sense, because Sauron makes himself king of the Southlands, the Southlands. I hate the term Southlands. I hate saying it because it's made up. Because this place does not exist in at least not the way it looks right now.
Yeah.
And also Numenorians, if this was an adequate portrayal of where the Numenorians were at this time, they would have had like settlements in Middle Earth, and they would have been like the overlords of the men in Middle Earth. Like they would have been taxing them, and taking their like I don't know, just messing around with them, being their overlords. So it's strange to me that they're sort of non-existent in this. They're the Numenorians aren't even doing their own jobs, I guess, which is like either Numenor is good or it's bad. They can't figure out whether or not the Numenorians are good or bad. They can't figure out whether or not people like want Sauron to come back, or they like the elves, or they don't like the orcs. Like they can't, like, I don't really know what's going on with any of these characters. The only ones I actually kind of understand are Elrond and Doran. Is it Doran? Yeah, Doran.
Durin. Yeah.
Yeah. Though I don't understand how, like, they keep let's switch focus to those two, because I feel like
I did enjoy. Now, that is probably my favorite storyline, is with the dwarves and Elrond.
Yeah.
In the show, I'm not too interested in the hobbits, the Harfoots or whatever they're called.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody.
I guess my only question is who's the strange guy that fell out of the sky?
That's just Gandalf. There's no question about
I
that. Like,
actually that was my wondering of it, but again, I'm so uneducated on most of the backstories on all this.
well, it's not the backstory. You don't need to be knowledgeable in the backstory.
I guess so. I guess that's what we've been mentioning, is it's not really following the the plot lines.
Yes,
no pun intended.
This show is anti-plot lines. This is actually this kind of like series could be plot lines is anti-plot lines, figuring out all the problems with the plot lines, because most of the things I've done, sort of looking at prior to the recent months, I'd usually looked at like good literature, good movies, things that I usually liked more. But this is sort of my first go at looking at things I really don't like. You know what I mean? Or things that at least are manipulating things I do like into things that aren't very impressive.
So this doesn't even qualify as a guilty pleasure.
I feel guilty, but I don't find much pleasure in it. Is it a guilty pleasure for you, or is it?
No, I mean, the show's all right. I mean, I'm somewhat invested in it, so I'm gonna continue to watch it.
That's good.
The first episode, definitely. The second episode, I was getting extremely bored and almost quit just with the deal. I was talking to a really good friend of mine who, since he was young, he's been into all the Tolkien folklore stuff and all that. And he said the other day he refuses to watch it because he doesn't want to see them bastardize all of Tolkien's work, And I told him, I said, well, I guess I understand that from what people were saying, but I told him it's picking up a little bit, but it's still kind of frustrating on some of the episodes. But back to Elrond and Durin, I guess what makes that story interesting to me is that you can see it just seems like they have a good relationship. Like, it started out rough. Durin was mad at him for not talking to him for years or whatever, but they've hashed it out and done all that. Now I'm kind of a little like Durin's wife. I can't think of her name, but she kind of annoys me a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't remember her name either.
But But I don't know. I like their relationship, and it did remind me because I remember elves are supposed to have phenomenal hearing, right? They can hear, if I remember right, they're supposed to be able to hear great distances, right?
Yeah, and well, see at least see.
Was it C?
It's at least see great distances. I don't know. I think hearing too. So
Okay, yeah, you're right. Because
I think it's both.
yeah, because definitely hearing. Because I'm thinking about reading in the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, but I
Yeah,
thought it
I
was
think
hearing
it's both.
because I saw when he was listening to Durin and his wife talk last night. Obviously, he was far off, so it kind of reminded me of one of his abilities as an elf, which I guess was a good thing to do. But if you hadn't known that, would you have picked up on that?
Um, I mean,
I mean
I
that it's
think
good for all elves, I guess, not just him in particular.
that insofar as the way they did it, I think that Elrond could like the way that the they zoomed back to him watching kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think I think that was them showing what was going on, and I think that was okay. So I don't think they did a poor job in
Okay.
that
Yeah.
area. I mean I like it. I like the Elrond Doran stuff for the most part, though I didn't think it I assume at least in Tolkien's lore, Mithril had already been found at this point. So they're just kind of pulling out things that aren't really that big of a deal, that as a big deal, but I get where they're coming from at least. I didn't
Yeah.
think it was I thought it was set up poorly 2 episodes ago for them to be like, oh, there's the secret they're holding on to, but they can't even really mine it anyways. Like it's too dangerous to mine, which I don't really understand necessarily. I feel like that's just a sort of for distracting us kind of thing. And though I am very interested, sort of Durin is going to go with Elrond to Lindon, and I think that's at least somewhat interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't make sense that so if they're all on the same timeline, how many days have gone by? Galadriel's been in Numenor for 3 days. Okay, how are they already building like the tower in Aragian so fast
Yeah.
with Celebrimbor? Also, Celebrimbor is like, oh, I remember your father, but I just remembered this now. Anyways, that was weird. Celebrimbor's odd in this. That's just kind of inconsistencies
What is his relationship in the show? I guess.
in the show. What do you mean his relationship?
Like, I guess I'm not. Maybe I was too bored in the first episodes, but like when I was seeing him talking to Elrond, I wasn't sure what his role exactly was, and I meant to look it up before tonight, but I never got around to it.
Celebrimbor is the sole heir of one of the like most powerful elves in history, uh, Feanor. So he has that great lineage behind him,
Okay.
and he is a elf lord. So he is a lord, and in this show, for whatever reason, Elrond isn't a lord, even though he should be a lord. So basically, he's kind of he can tell Elrond what to do so far. And Gilgalad had sent Gilgalad, who's the High King of the Elves, sent Elrond to assist Celebrimbor in making whatever he needed. And Celebrimbor is basically just this great smith. He is a smith lord. He can make a bunch of stuff. I don't know what I mean, he makes the rings of power, so hopefully you'd think this show would be more about him than Galadriel. Like literally, if anybody was gonna be they should have called this show at this point uh the downfall of Numenor, because that makes more sense in the context of what they've been doing. Now they've been focusing completely on Numenor for the most part, and the dwarf one hasn't even had anything to do with the rings necessarily. It's just Elrond's relationship with Durin, which doesn't really seem to have that much connections with that, if you know what I mean. It just seems like the plot's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I'd like them to stick with one plot.
Yeah. There are a lot of different things going on with different parts of the map, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
one of
hopefully with all the, like I said, with all the confusion and unsure aspects of the show, hopefully by the end it's tied in nicely, you know.
that'd be nice. I'm not holding out hope for it necessarily, just because the writing is just not that like interesting. They're not doing much with their characters. They say a lot of odd things. They say a lot of things that don't mean anything, but they're trying to be witty. Like that's just sort of what I kind of gather from their abilities. It really does seem like, six writers got into a room, which this is exactly how it was made. Six writers got in the room and we're like, okay, we're gonna all come up with witty lines, and we're just gonna pick whatever we think is best for like dialogue, and it's very inconsistent and very choppy. Though it was weird that like Elrond kept referring to the 20 years that he hadn't seen Durin, when he had already supposedly had patched that stuff up. Like that was a thing that I thought had been dealt with, but apparently not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of strange if you think about it. But the secrecy just kind of seemed unnecessary for the plot. A lot of this stuff seems just kind of unnecessary, and when it's resolved, it just feels kind of like, oh, okay, we're done with that. Moving on. What do you think? What do you think of the overall Elrond and Durin plot?
Well, I don't know that I have much more to add than what I said earlier about it. I mean, out of all the plot lines, that's the most enjoyable one to me. Um, it does feel like there is still some resentment on Durin's part towards Elrond, and there's still not the trust there that you would expect between two really good friends. I mean, that's the impression I get, especially by the end of the show, when Durin's talking to his father. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those two when they go to what's it what's the town he's wanting to go to?
Linden. They're going to Linden.
Yeah, Linden. I was going to say Lindell, but Linden.
Which I'm not really sure, unless. Okay, here's how, like, at least they could put all these stories together if they decided they wanted to bring all these stories together. They have Galadriel and the Numenorians go on a ship to Linden to maybe convince Gilgalad to help, fight Sauron or whatever. And you have Durin and Elrond show up there, and they can all go on an adventure. Now, finally, we only have to follow only one plot line, except for the hobbits who no one cares about. So it can go back and forth between everyone and the hobbits, which still somehow manages to give us more plots than needed, but at least like getting everyone in one location, or at least like half the people in one, or like half the people in one location and half the other people in another, instead of 5 or 4 locations at once, is just would be so much better for this show. That would be my suggestion for this show. If and also, if they somehow can get Halbarad to Celebrimbor, and then they can finally get to the Sauron and the Rings of Power part, that would at least be helpful, because I'm assuming Halbarad is Sauron, and then they can help make the Rings of Power. He can betray him. Sauron can become the big bad guy. Then they can all fight Sauron, barely win, and then Sauron can get captured and be brought to Numenor, and we can sort of get some, if they could just find a way to follow Tolkien's storyline just a little bit, that would make me happy.
So speaking of Tolkien's storyline and his folklore, the hobbits in this part of his folklore, did they originally have any really much to do? Because from what I've always understood from the hobbits, from reading Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, is that they were kind of separate and apart from what everybody else was going on. Is that not correct, or is that
at this point they didn't exist?
okay? Well, yeah, then they definitely weren't part of it.
Yeah, they literally just didn't exist.
Okay, so
during this time, so they have no part to play. If Gandalf is here, he also wasn't in Middle Earth at this point either. So that little storyline, whatever's happening with that, just
who knows where it's gonna go?
Who knows? I certainly do not know where it's
going. Because I always had the impression that the hobbits were just kind of in their own secluded bubble world and weren't really bothered by what everybody else was doing. It was kind of like so anyway,
I mean, okay, so in the Second Age they actually do stuff. They fight in a few wars and stuff like that. Or sorry, Third Age I meant, or middle Third Age. They first show up sort of in the storylines. I mean, really, this is what it comes down to, is that they made the story. They wrote a TV show for the wrong period. They should have made a period or a show about the middle of the Third Age, and they could have started with the War of Wrath, and then they could have just skipped, or not War of Wrath, a War of the Last Alliance that we see in the beginning of the Lord of the Rings movies. And then fast forward to the conflicts between Arnor and the Witch King and Gondor and all the different types of, all the different types of southern people and, the Corsairs of Umbar and Harad and stuff like that. And, they could have even had the Rohirrim, or the people that would become the Rohirrim in that, which they basically want the Southland people to be the Rohirrim. That's kind of what I've gathered from that. They just want them to look kind of like the Rohirrim and be, sort of generic men like that, that are, trying to stay alive and and are just getting in the middle of these wars, and that's kind of what's happening in this show. And if they could just sort of manage, what's the word? If they could have just picked the right time to do it, it doesn't really make sense to do the story that they're trying to tell in the Second Age, where all the storylines are kind of far apart from each other, when you could easily have like more contained stories. Like if I could do a Third Age middle of the Third Age story, you could have a story where it's like, okay, one season is this group, one season is this group, and then maybe later down the line seasons interact with each other and they all come together for a storyline eventually. And they could have done that with this story too. They could have had they could have started with the Rings of Power series 1, where they just focus around the elves and their dealings with Sauron, with maybe guest appearances from the Numenorians. That's one storyline. Okay, second storyline, you have the Numenorians dealing with other men, which could be the Sutherland people. And that storyline could be about how Mordor came into exist and Sauron rose to power. And that's one season. Another season would be the fall of Numenor. That's another season. Okay, you could probably tell a season about the dwarves, maybe. I don't know. You could figure something out. I mean, I think there is enough information about the Second Age that they could have done this, and where they could have had like, I don't know. Did you ever see like the Netflix Marvel shows?
The Netflix Marvel.
Yeah, like Daredevil.
No, I haven't seen those.
Okay. Well, for anybody who's seen the Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones shows, they're all self-contained stories. They intermingle occasionally, and then they came together for one season where they all had to deal with a big bad, or a problem in New York City that was too big for individuals. They could have done something similar. It wouldn't have been perfect. It's kind of hard to do these grand storylines where everyone and their mother is involved in, and that's kind of the problem that they're dealing with. If Tolkien had actually written, a storyline like this, he probably would have taken one person's perspective, met with different people, and then split off, and at least you would have liked everybody. And there would have been other things going on, just like in Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, there's a whole lot of things going on in the background that you don't necessarily see. Sometimes it's explained later in the story, and sometimes it's in the appendices, but there's tons of stuff going around, not just with the main cast of characters. But you have to do something that's linear, that people aren't just bouncing back and forth between and getting confused. Jason, we had talked about how, we've both read the Song of Ice and Fire books. And that, just that Lord of the Rings, or not Lord of the Rings, that Game of Thrones has kind of ruined those books insofar as, it made them so, so egregiously evil insofar as the, pornography and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at least that storyline, one of the things that storyline was able to do, or that TV show was able to do, was they started with a main cast of characters, and they only spread them out as you got used to or related to them and enjoyed them. And then they went on their different adventures, but you still liked the characters already before you broke them all up and sent them different directions. And that's what Lord of the Rings does, or that's what Tolkien does in Lord of the Rings. He breaks the fellowship, and then there's two separate storylines that meet and that work with each other. And then they come together in the end, and everything works out, or it works out fine, because what you're who you're following, and you're enjoying everyone's story at once.
Yeah. No, I talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, I when we had talked offline, I haven't seen but maybe an episode or two of the show, and because it was so egregiously vulgar and pornographic, I never finished it. But from what I did hear about it was, because if you read the books, there are a ton of characters that actually the show actually kind of simplified a lot of that. But but to your point though, that with this show they're trying to do too much in a little bit of time. I agree with that. They could have done a better planning job, especially for people like me that don't know the folklore but are interested in the actual folklore itself. Would have been nice, because I do plan to, after I finish, because right now I'm reading Devils by Dostoevsky, which I've read in college. I ain't read it in years, but I'm going to order the what's it called, the
Silmarillion.
Yeah, Silmarillion, and read that next. So I want to get into the Tolkien folklore. but initially I was thinking, well, I could do that, read it first, and then watch the show. But from the way everybody sounds, it's not gonna really matter.
Yeah, I don't think you'll start reading it, and when you get to the age, because most of the Silmarillion isn't this age anyways. It's like one chapter that
Oh,
you'll
okay.
one
Yeah,
or two chapters that
and
you'll
and there
get into.
are others that I know he had, but yeah, I just wish maybe each episode would spend maybe a little bit more time, maybe focus on one or two storylines, go in depth, and then do another instead of doing four different ones, and that way we have a better flow and a better understanding of what's it, what might be happening down the road, where they're headed, what their goal is, what's the mission of the show, basically.
I think the clear thing is that they don't have a mission except for to make money
Get
with
rings of power.
Adar as Bezos.
Yeah.
He is the real villain of the story. He's looking at that orc like it's Tolkien's work, and he's like crying over it, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, and then he kills it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't too sorry.
What?
I said he's not too sorry.
Yeah, he's
I
not too
think
sorry. He's
I
like
think Adar.
psychotically sorry.
I was gonna say I think Adar may have more feelings about killing that orc than what Bezos had with killing Tolkien's folklore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are I think there are a lot of people laughing behind the scenes, like, we got we got to play around in Tolkien's world, and we got to use it for our own goals and our own uses, and nothing else really matters for them.
Have you ever listened to the stand-up comedian Jim Gaffigan?
Yeah.
So he has a bit that talks about like he's that when you go to Disney World and it's super hot and you're just on these rides, like it's a small world after all and stuff like that. And he makes a joke. He's like, they're behind closed doors talking. What are they gonna do? We already got their money. That's kind of like the show here. What are they gonna do? We've already got their money.
Yep. True that. That is probably exactly what they're feeling like. But yeah, well, let's wrap this up. I think we've covered it. What do you think? What would you rate this show out of 10? 10 being the best.
This episode in particular, or the whole thing?
This episode.
Let's see. I mean, I'd give it a 6.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 5.
Because I think it's better than all the others that have come along. I did enjoy some of the action that they had, I guess, and seeing Morgoth's sword, or the sword that Morgoth made, or whatever.
Also, it's Sauron, probably not Morgoth's.
No, okay. Well, one of the things when I was reading off that Nerdiest, it had mentioned something about it.
Well, Morgoth is the one who made the first orc.
Yeah, right, yeah, but one of them had said Morgoth's sword, but this sword, which I'm interested in now, see what so I like that aspect. Like I said, I like the Durin and Elrond story. So, and it wasn't boring. And we finally found out why the Queen Regent, or the Princess Regent, whatever the proper term
Queen
is.
Regent.
Yeah,
I mean,
Queen
Regent. It doesn't make sense for her to be Queen Regent, because that's not how regencies work.
Yeah. But so, but we finally found out why she has been so combative with wanting to create that alliance or not help. And then again, you get in the whole, like, everybody was switching, but
it still doesn't make sense why. Like, you want to avoid, you see Galadriel in the vision, or part of the vision is that Galadriel shows up, and that's what makes this prophecy come true. But that doesn't really. I feel like they're just like she's being silly, that she's assuming that just her existence on the island, her not being on the island, will make
Yeah.
it not come true. Like that doesn't make sense.
Well, I viewed it. I guess the way that I took it is, she viewed Galadriel like, okay, in the vision, she saw her, all this stuff, bad stuff happened. It was because Galadriel was there, and she was assuming, oh, it's because I made this alliance with her potentially that caused the problem. So I just need to get rid of her. And not you could, because Galadriel, if I remember right, even makes the argument like, well, you could be looking at this vision wrong. It could be the fact that you sent me away that all these bad things happened. So
Yeah, or it could not be related to her at all. I mean, just saying,
not at all. Yeah.
like that. I feel like they're just making a lot of assumptions, and she's just like being rash about everything. And
Yeah.
and maybe if we felt like there were consequences to her actions more, I would understand. Like if we had maybe been shown if there was like a civil war prior, like it seems like no one is willing to be violent. Like nobody has like consequences in this show in Numenor. So how am I supposed to feel bad for her? Or how am I
Yeah.
supposed to think, oh, she's in danger of losing her kingdom
Yeah.
at some point? But that's not what I'm getting at. Like it seems like, and by the end, it seems like she's able to control everyone just by saying, "We're doing this. Don't question me."
Yeah. Well, I guess that whole thing right there is why I kind of gave it a 6, because I felt with that and
Yeah.
some of the other things, we're finally starting to make progress. Because again, the first episode or two, it was like we're getting nowhere.
Yeah.
But now it finally feels like the wheels are starting to move. Hopefully things will start making more sense. So
Yeah, maybe
we'll see.
something will happen. That's that's the hope. Something more will happen. But I kind of just want to see. I want to see Galadriel become Galadriel. She's not Galadriel right now to me. And hopefully when she becomes Galadriel, I will enjoy her character more. But
Yeah.
until then, she's just kind of irritating. And even Sauron understands that she's irritating. And Sauron's more likable than Galadriel. That's all I'm saying. Like I mean, Sauron should be kind of likable insofar as charming, but Galadriel should still be likable insofar as she's a good person, but she doesn't act like a good person. Muriel doesn't act like a good person. Farazan doesn't act like a good person, but he doesn't do anything, so it doesn't really matter. He gives a speech, and that's about it.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of on an island here because I don't dislike or get annoyed by Galadriel for the most part. I know I've been disappointed by her in the sense that she talks this game like, well, you ain't gonna stop me. You know, I'm gonna leave and do what I want to do. Oh, she's in prison.
Well,
without a fight, you know.
well, Jason, how old do you think she is?
I have no idea.
Well, no, but like based on the way she acts, how old do you think she is?
Like in the show, like in human years.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's all human years. But how old?
Well,
do you
I
think
guess I say human years because elves.
Well, they live forever, but
Yeah,
they still
yeah,
measure years the
they
same way
can.
as we
Yeah.
do.
So, well, I mean,
how many years? How old do you think she is?
in the show, I would probably say in her 20s.
Yeah, well, she's like thousands of years old. She should not be acting like a child. She's acting like a little kid. She's thousands of years old. She's
Yeah.
seen death and destruction, and like all she does is act petty and arrogant and
Well, I mean, I could be 1,000 years old and I'd still be acting like that.
okay. I don't think that's true. I don't think if you're 1,000 years old and you're this rebellious, you're probably evil already. You know what I mean? Like if you think nobody knows anything better than you have the ego the size of Mount Everest, and you're going to and you're just like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, just as the running joke we have is concupiscence.
Yes. If only Angela were here for that. But yeah, no, it's just like she is much older than she appears to be. And she acts like a little kid. If she acted like she was thousands of years old, which elves are supposed to be ethereal, they're supposed to be more knowledgeable, they're supposed to, they're supposed to have this gravitas, but she has none of it. She's just petulant. And I mean, look at Galadriel in the movies. Like, does this seem like Galadriel at all to you?
Well, no, not at all.
Well,
So
she's not supposed to change that much.
yeah, no, not at all. She's because the Galadriel in the books and stuff like that seems very eloquent, seems very mild tempered, seems very intelligent, graceful.
You said eloquent. That's actually an interesting thing because I think the real problem is that the writers aren't eloquent. If the writers were eloquent, then she would be eloquent. But since the writers aren't eloquent, she is not eloquent.
So do you think, in your opinion, that maybe she is like she is, in the show versus like she is in the books, because it's the writers trying to implant in the minds of the viewers that this is a strong feminist woman who doesn't take no garbage off anybody?
Yes, but what's weird to me is I would have thought if you're dealing with another strong woman like that, you wouldn't act like a total, you just wouldn't act so arrogant. Like,
well, I think
Muriel.
I think it speaks to the bigger issue of our society, right? Because today we have, not only do we have a misconstrued notion of what a strong man is, we obviously have the wrong idea of what a strong woman is. A strong woman is not a woman who is graceful, elegant, firm when she needs to be firm, respectful.
Is that?
Yeah. What I say isn't.
You said isn't.
Oh yeah, sorry. Is those things, but today we have this idea that is pushed onto us that a strong woman, is a woman who doesn't need a man, is boastful, is forceful, is arrogant, is cocky, is all the things that we're talking about that you're seeing in Galadriel, and that speaks of the bigger issue of our society, right? This is what young girls are being told a strong, independent woman is supposed to be like, and that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah, they're being taught that a strong woman is really unlikable. That's the thing is, like, if a man did that, the same thing, he'd be unlikable. Both Queen Muriel and Galadriel are doing this weird forceful thing, this weird arrogant, these weird things that it's like with Hillary and Kamala, where all they do is laugh whenever someone tries to question anything that they're saying. They just laugh at this is kind of the story version of just laugh it off.
Well, let me not to get too much down the rabbit hole here, but I know you're a younger guy, but in my experience with women in positions of power today, like in the workforce, not all, I've had a few, but for the most part, those that are in the position of power always seem to have a chip on their shoulder, like they really have to show their butts, right? For lack of better terms. Like, I'll give you an example. I was at a meeting with the client of ours in Colorado one time, and it was led by a female engineer. And we had to sit there for 20 minutes while she told us how tough she was, how petulant she was, how petty she was in certain instances, dealing with other men and whatnot, basically trying to show us she's a strong woman you shouldn't cross. And we all left, and we all came off as that was just completely petty. But again, can you falter? Because this is what the world TV shows are telling you a strong woman is supposed to be like.
I mean, I can fault her so far as she should know how to treat other human beings.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I mean, this shows more that there's a parent problem, that or there's such a problem that people don't even look up to their parents to begin with.
Well, yeah.
Either parents are telling their kids to be terrible people to others because they're a woman, just like, if you're a woman, you have to be like, okay, I guess what they're doing is they think all men are like this. They think men are petty, petulant, and out to be jerks. So they decide, okay, if men can do this, we have to too, and we have to do it so like on a higher level, or we need to do it more obvious so they get that we're strong and independent and
Mhm.
don't need them.
Well, just like I said, I don't want to go off the rabbit hole because I can talk about it forever. But feminism has just infected our society to its core, and we see it in our TV shows, right? Because art, entertainment, stuff like that is a lot of times a reflection of the society around you. So
I mean that's why I do these shows. That's why I talk about this stuff, because if you don't have a culture, then you will just crash and burn. You will become Mordor. If if you don't have a culture where people want to work together and want to be good Christians, basically, and you know uh if you think all you're trying to do is be above other people and that you have to overcome people, then you're looking at it wrong.
yeah.
Your whole purpose in this world is to help others. And if everyone's perspective is trying to help other people, then those people that are also that need help, that also help people, will get the help they need as well. So instead of being total jackasses, try and be good to other people. And that's what Galadriel needed to be. Galadriel needed to come in there and be respectful
Yeah.
and show and say that, Numenorians were great friends once upon a time, and
Well,
we
didn't
understand.
Sauron tell her that basically?
Exactly. But like, Sauron is basically giving all the answers, but that's because at least that's Sauron knows how to manipulate people. And in some ways, if you're sincere about your view of people, sincere that you want to work with people and that you respect them and that you're thankful for their assistance, because Galadriel was saved from this ocean, from the sea, from drowning, and she didn't care. She didn't thank them at all
No, she
uh,
did.
for helping her. It's like she wanted to drown.
It's like they owed her that.
Yeah, which mm, it's like when you don't know some people, then you expect them to owe you something. That's not how things work. That's kind of the liberal mentality. Is you don't need to know someone. You can look at them, and something about their features will tell you whether or not they owe you something. And if their features match up to a certain thing, then you can tell them what to do, and they should have to listen to you because of reasons.
Yeah.
Because of reasons, or something even about you, like, oh, I'm so special. I don't, but in all of it's like interior special. So like, at least Galadriel can say, well, I mean, Galadriel can say that she is, a an elven princess who has, I don't know. They haven't shown us much that she's like worthy of. Like, she's not worthy of anything because she hasn't done anything worthy of having any worth. But like, if she had something that she could say, I did this, and or I've made really, I don't know. She doesn't have any importance except for the fact that she knows what she's doing, but not everyone else is on board. It's like, yeah, well, you need to convince people. Not everything is just like, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen and everyone else is going to follow. That's not how things work. You have to be convincing. You have to be a good diplomat. She is terrible at all those things. So therefore she's just terrible at everything. And but it's mind-boggling that even the show recognizes it sometimes, but still doesn't change anything. And I think one of the things that they said in response to all this, all the critiques of her being insufferable, is basically that she's on a character arc. That's not enough to say that she's not, basically stay with us. She's insufferable, but she's going to change. Well, that's not how storytelling works. You have to make someone interesting enough or enjoy or likable enough for us to want to watch without having you tell us that, don't worry, she's going to be different soon, and then you'll like her. That's not how that works.
Yeah, usually you don't meet people and they're like, hey, I'm going to be a jerk to you for a month and then you'll like me afterwards. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Like Eowyn in Lord of the Rings has problems. Like she's going into, she wants to fight. She wants to be a shield maiden. She wants to go and basically fight with all the men and stuff like that. But that's not a good thing. She's not supposed to. But she's at least likable in other characteristics. She is still noble. She wants to do the right thing, and you enjoy her character because you know that she's having these troubles, and everyone else is trying to help her too. And eventually she comes out of that desire to fight and to die and eventually finds love. And that's her story. And she still does heroic things in that, but she does realize at the end that she wants something else. She wants what she's supposed to want, and that she was poisoned by what's the guy, the Grima Wormtongue. Like, she's poisoned into being a feminist basically by Grima Wormtongue. This is literally Tolkien's story. So that she's basically poisoned into believing that she should be a warrior and that she wants to do what men do. And then after she kills the Witch King, she comes out of that because she's cured of her basically madness. And she realizes that she really just wants to she finds this great man and she settles down and gets married and has a family. So you can't go from like Galadriel, who everyone almost supports her in what she's doing, except for the way she goes about it. Like, the only thing they disagree with her is how much of a terrible person she acts towards everyone. Not that she's, this warrior princess. She's not a warrior princess, and she shouldn't be a warrior princess. But no one will tell her that because feminism. But yeah, okay. That was a great tangent for the episode.
There you go.
We might have to I might have to cut all that and just not cut it out, but to make a cut and put that as a clip of maybe, but who knows.
Yeah, well, yeah, put a controversial subject up there, get people to watch it.
Yeah. But anyways, all of you listening, if you haven't, please like, share, and subscribe, and join our Discord channel, link in the description, and tell us what you thought about the show, and join us next week for the review of episode 5. Jason, anything you have? Anything you want to point people to?
Yeah, so I for those unfamiliar with what I do, I co-host a podcast with a guy named Mark. It's called Tradman Podcast. This week we're going to actually do an episode with Angela Erickson on crisis pregnancy centers. And then we're also going to do an episode, hopefully next week, with Jeremiah, the Paleocrat, on charismatic Catholics and the movement within that group. And then I'm also really excited because we're going to take on an ambitious project. We're going to talk about the different rites and churches within those rites of the church. We're going to try to cover all of them best we can. But I'm really looking forward to that because, the church is bigger and more beautiful than people realize. So we're hoping to be able to share that. But yeah, just check us out on Twitter and YouTube and any of the major podcast platforms.
Yeah, definitely check out the Tradmen. Maybe one day I'll show up there. Who knows?
Oh, you will. We'll get you there.
Well, eventually we'll get there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that day. But yeah, so Tradmen is a great podcast. I will link that in the description after the show. And again, please check us out next week, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And next week you'll see an episode with me and Peter from Von Day